specializes in entrepreneurship, business owners, and when we met for the first time, she already had this lesson plan made out. We were looking through it, and I noticed that a lot of the terminology that she was using and the pathway, the plan that she was going with, the lesson plan, fit perfectly in with design thinking, with life design that you do at BGSU, obviously business ownership, and all of our mission, vision, values, and goals as a university and in the Schmidt-Horst College of Business. So, Juanita is here. Juanita, most of our students, actually in our entrepreneurship program, are not necessarily business students. How many of you are a business student? Wow, yeah, it's about 3. We have lots of aviation, construction management, tourism, hospitality, event management. So we're all over the board, but at least we have some sort of interest in entrepreneurship and especially mental health these days. So without further ado, I'm going to just turn it over to Juanita. And I have,
Thank you.
You probably want to see, you want me to pass those out now? Or
Yes.
Okay. I will pass those out.
Oh, now it.
There. So is that how you
That's
look up
good.
there?
That's
And,
good.
he's here.
Okay.
I will get those passed out. My stuff.
Okay, so I'm Juanita, and today I'm going to talk about your money maker, aka your mind. All right, that's why we're here. College setting, enlarging all of the information that you can about your specific majors to produce like a higher income, right? But in regards to entrepreneurs, because the mind is where moneymaker is, it is very crucial that we have a good mental health. And I'm going to, got a couple, and figure out how to do the little clicker, so I'm going to click here. Today talk to you about guarding your genius, protecting the mental wellness and intellectual property of, or intellectual property. What have you learned about intellectual property so far? And definitely, if you have an answer, because I'm going to ask questions, go ahead, raise your hand, and answer the questions. I like to get to the root of, I'll tell you that as well, of the topic that we're talking about as well. So just kind of what have you learned about intellectual property either in this class or that you know about? A lot of intellectual property has to be like protected with something like a trademark or a patent in order to do the same. Yeah.
I was gonna say like people can trademark like your own ideas, like publishing and stuff.
And both of you, you have nailed 2 of those. Normally, I was teaching in ethics studies department. I give you candy, but sorry, I forgot to bring my candy. So, like I said, I like to get to the root of it. Get to the root of things, and it helps get to understand the source better. Okay, so what I was looking for is it's a noun. And when you look it up on in regards to the definition, online in the dictionary, it's considered a noun. So intellectual property refers to creations of the mind, such as interventions, literary and artistic works, designs, and symbols, names, and images used in commerce, right? Money making. And then, as your classmates shared, now here's the thing. Intellectual property, and I underline, can be protected in law by patents, copyrights, and trademarks. So typically, you guys have probably learned about trademarks is like the startup before, and copyrights before registering it. But the thing is, it's only as good as the individual, whoever owns it, is going to follow through with all of the legal procedures of getting it copywritten and registered, and then if you see it, following through with all the legal matters. That can be done, by the way. There are, I know in college I changed my major 3 times. I understand. If you're interested in working in this area, there's also what are called business attorneys, and that's what they focus on specifically, is helping entrepreneurs via paperwork start up their businesses, or also helping them with the patents and copyrights and trademarks. There are those attorneys as well. But that's all they focus on. Okay, if intellectual property is a noun, where is it? There's a place to think. Where is it? Okay.
In your head?
Yes. Whereas neuroscientists would say the mind is in the physical matter of the brain, right? So in our head is another way to kind of shorten and condense that and say that as well. Okay, and houses are said to be the #1 asset, right? We tend to think of, when we think of assets and wealth, right, what do you think of when you hear that word wealth? Just give me a couple of different cars. Tangible.
Comfort. Being comfortable.
Comfortable, wealth. Oh, are you referring to like financial comfort, or I see you've got a nice...
More, more like a mental comfort of not having to go paycheck to paycheck.
So still tangible. And the thing is, like, wealth can also, it's up here. It's the knowledge, the information that you possess as well, okay? Or in the health industry, anyone ever heard of Eric Thomas, by the way? A motivational speaker. He goes back and forth with Tony Robbins, is #1. And he has a couple different programs out there. But one that they do mention is, often we think of cars, tangible items as products as wealth. Actually, it's our health, right? The health is what creates the longevity of our lives. And we have seen that with celebrities and things like that, even though they may have a lot of money. We got a couple suicides and things like that, and how are their lifestyles? How are they managing their physical health and their mental health? All right. Okay, so I use a lot of analogies, by the way, and it helps retention. So for this intellectual property analogy, I am going to refer to houses. Okay, and specifically property value. Okay? To keep up the property value in regards to a house structure, there are certain elements of maintenance, right, to the upkeep of it. Just like, I don't know if any of you have like landlords or things like that, or parents talk about owning a house, or if you own a house yourself, resources and access to it as well. This is an actual picture, by the way. I put the link there, and you'll see another one as well. It's not cropped together. This is a real neighborhood. So it's an example of you. Since we're in school, let me backtrack a little bit. You probably have heard the phrase, knowledge is power. Who believes that? Right? Okay, thank you. But really, if I can elaborate a little bit more, technically it's not, because we all know to eat so many vegetables, exercise, drink this amount of water, this amount of hours of sleep, but we don't do it. So even though we know that stuff, it's not until you apply the knowledge that's where the power comes in. Okay? How is property value determined? Anyone like real estate at all? How do we know in the real estate market, how is property value determined? The area it's in? Yeah, area?
Yeah, I was going to say the houses around it can increase or decrease the property value.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say that property value is just a is taking every consideration into consideration to really determine the actual value of the home, not just in physicality, but also like as where it like actually stands in the world, as in like how nice it's like, I don't know, like how nice it looks compared to other houses that are commonly known in the area, like they were saying.
Yeah.
How much you can sell it for?
How much you can sell it for? I want to know that. I love your classroom participation, by the way. This is great. Okay, so yes, thank you for all your answers. And so what I'm going to do is, still using the analogy of a house, also translate it into entrepreneurs, okay? So as one mentioned, location and proximity. Okay, your location as an entrepreneur and who you interact with socially can affect you as well. So physically, if you had a business idea of, let's say an arcade or something like that, would you want to put an arcade, you know, somewhere off Route 6 or 24, or, do you know what I mean? Like, we have to know the proximity and location of what's a good space and place for my my business idea, and then who I am around, right? Proximity, the people I'm around. And sometimes you guys may hear this phrase, for those of you who keep going into business areas, is my network is my net worth. Sometimes you hear that as well. So that's important too, like who you're around. Condition and age. Someone kind of had mentioned that as well. The condition of the space and taking care of it. So taking care of yourself and your memory, that's your wealth. Like I said, health is your wealth. Anyone familiar with the term like HELOC or HELOCs? Or sometimes wealth has been referred to in regards to home equity. Anyone heard of home equity? Like this is how much, so that's the margin in between what you owe on the house and what you can sell it for. And I've been kind of wondering about this because I took a HELOC out, and it's interesting that even though we see and are told like equity is a good thing, it translates into your wealth for yourself, percentage rates. Be mindful of like those percentage rates as well, and knowing is this, when I take this out, do I have the capacity of creating higher margins than what the percentage rate, I think it's around 8% right now, of what it is, okay? I just wanted to add that in there because we often hear about equity as if it's a great thing, but I'm just presenting today to help you be realistic about knowing the numbers. Is this a good a fit for what I'm going to use it for? Because most of the time people use it for repairs, and that doesn't often equal into profit. Next, so comparable sales, someone said that as well, also known as like comps. Knowing your competition, okay? Often, this is my son today, and my kids, they know that it's healthier when we can compare ourselves to ourselves this way. But it's still encouraged to be mindful of what's going on around. And there are, I think I looked up two, I mentioned two in today's slide, traditional ways of business, and that is what's the need, right? We tend to draw on that. Or the other way is how can I make something better or improve on it? And we see this with Lyft and Uber. They were, I can't remember, I think it was Uber was first, I think. And then Lyft comes along. Like, it doesn't mean that just because you may have a business idea, don't tell yourself no. Just still, you can try, because there's chances that you can improve on it, because there's 3 different ways in which a business idea can initiate and start. So keep that in mind, and being kind to yourself Next is supply and demand. So that's the second one I mentioned, the need. And okay, the last one, assurance. Assuring yourself, is this invention created for a time and a place such as this? Some inventions that have been created, happened to be at the right time, right? KFC happened to fit the needs at that time. If many of you know the stories of women started to work outside the home, and it helped them. It fit that need. Because if he opened it up now, today, there's so many restaurants and places to go to eat, it just wouldn't be as successful as it was back then. So knowing in regards to business, the time, the space, is this a good fit, okay? Another thing in regards to a value and property value, there are some companies that it's amazing that they are able to reach such high levels in which they don't even need marketing, right? And so, for example, on TV, we often don't see certain, you mentioned cars earlier, there's certain cars, being one of them, that are not advertised, like the Maserati, the fancier kind of luxury cars, because they tend to, the brand speaks for itself. And this is also something I've been noticing lately is, I call it breaching business risk. Breaching business risk. So I just moved into a property in Maumee, downtown Maumee, and my mother, when she was around my age, she moved into a building. And I was thinking about this this last night or the night before of what was the difference. She had kids around the same age as my kids. What's the difference? And I feel like now we are breaching risk by this trend of having followers first before customers, before moving into the brick and mortar. Do you guys notice that? Like the food vendors, even books. I've been told, because I'm trying to publish, to put some of your information or a little bit of your book on the website or whatever to get the lead, to get the following first before just going into publishing. So it seems like there are quite a few. I wish I could hear all of your guys' majors. I'd love to hear, give like individual details of what that would look like. So that's something to think about as well, because I know we're going to talk about risk today. How do homeowners upkeep their property? Okay. As I'm referring to, condition of intellectual property. The way that they do is weatherproofing. You may have heard of this or seen your parents put things, or yourselves, even if you own homes. Weatherproofing the house, the outdoor and the interior as well, the windows. In the business world, an example would be like collaborating with others. Like, how am I protecting and ensuring the value stays where it is or increases? Providing the needs for when things do break. So for example, in the house, a drawer, shelf, window, something breaks, that able to provide it so that way it gets fixed, maintain the upkeep. Business, it would be providing the business value. I would suggest looking at like quarterly goals, reviewing them often to kind of make sure that I'm providing the business attention that it might need. Okay, which is, because there's a difference, and I'm sure you guys learned in this class, of working in your business and on your business. Can anyone tell me the difference, by the way? In case. So I see eyes going the other way. What's the difference between working in your business and on your business?
Working in your business, you might be like in your shop, like doing work, like selling items, and like working on your business, you might be like working on like financial plans or how to like better your overall company.
Yep, that's a good word, overall. So in the business is usually one-on-one customer or notes. On business, marketing, so things outside that don't necessarily equal a direct profit but lead to it. And then prepare. Preparing for increasing the value would be something like, or in the event of an emergency, homeowner's insurance, or something like that. For business, keeping the ideas coming, right? Because, and you see this with Amazon, different companies, they're doing this, of keeping fresh, innovative ideas, keeping them coming to be prepared for what's next in the generations. For today's presentation, I'm going to talk about specifically protect. And my goal is that after today, like I was supposed to speak with Ryan, that I'd be able to teach my own section and further elaborate on all of this information to include more details and to provide and prepare. So you guys might see another sheet later on for that as well, asking for feedback. And so for right now, if you could pull your sheets out, and this is a time where, obviously, myself as a therapist, we're going to reflect inward to get that information out and finding, this is review, how am I protecting, providing, and preparing my mind for increased value? And if you want to, like, as a student, if you can't get your mind to think as an entrepreneur, and I just say as a student, how am I doing this? How am I providing this for myself, my mind, my intellectual property? I see some pen movement, but that's good that you're able to like think, elaborate, and pull, and question this analyzing internal self. It's healthy to do that. It feels uncomfortable sometimes when you first start doing it, but or journaling, I guess that's another example. Pulling out that information to really get a little bit of a different perspective. Analyzing it. Okay? So you keep those answers and then look it through. A couple more questions and then Ryan will direct you on what to do with them. Okay, so I'm going to introduce myself because you're like, well, what is this girl talking about? So my background, Juanita, I actually came to BG, and education major, and then switched into, I'm like, oh, kids, no, I can't do this with kids. Lived in Cole Hall, and back then they had a program called PCC, so we lived and went to Toledo together on a bus and would do student teaching. And I realized that wasn't for me. So switched to like physical health, and then psychology. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to school that long. And then finally social work. And luckily I still graduated on time in 4 years with a social work degree and an ethics studies minor from BG. And for a couple years, I went overseas and worked on different military bases with a program through UT. They've changed the name recently. It was called Camp Adventure, and now they have renamed it. Sammy Span is the person in charge. It's a great program if any of you are education majors, that we worked with kids on different bases. So I lived in 5 different sites overseas and stateside, and it's just a great program, I think, for college students to experience helping and what it's like to work on military bases and seeing it's a different world as well. And then on top of being in another place, you get to experience other cultures and countries. And then came back, went to UT, and got my master's in social work. Most people don't know, so when you do see a therapist, they have 4 license types. It's either a social worker, a counselor, a psychology major, or psychology degree. You'll see the letters after the end of our names. And become LMFT, so licensed marriage and family counselors. We all do the same physical job, but we are trained differently from our background. Social workers, we tend to be a little bit more resource-based, right? And that's where the case management kind of comes in. The other thing, so just a side note as well, the letters after the name, so if you are, or if you're searching for someone, for a therapist for someone, The letters indicate, usually the more letters, the more, the licensure they have. So I was a LSW, which would be a dependently licensed person, and then LISW means independently licensed. So I can, now obviously I have my own private practice in Maumee, and I don't need someone to sign off on my notes. I started in Holland during the pandemic, private practice, which was life-worthy, also doing my creative mind, that's always there. Products to help people. I've wanted to do more of a masses, and sometimes I do teach classes as well in the community. I call bringing the couch to the community. And anxiety and depression, those are my specialty areas. I also specialize in Christian counseling as well. And it was about 2 years ago is when I started to notice a lot of people around me were entrepreneurs, a lot of my friends, and I began to host a Wednesday night, Wednesdays in my house. They're all entrepreneurs, and started to do what's called like a mirroring group to help hold them accountable. And it became fun, and then I grew into specifically helping entrepreneurs because they're the stress and anxiety, overwhelmingness, it tends to, of all of the career bases, the most because you're with your business all the time, right? Business all the time. I got certified in trauma of money. That is not an American-based program. It has been helpful and insightful on how our relationship with money does affect, or we can see the effects in our personal life as well as our business life. There are relationships with money that can create underspending or overspending. So keeping that in mind as well. Like I always say personally that money is our #1 emotional area. When somebody steals your money or identity, you're somebody. 2 is food, and then 3 is relationships. So for some reason our money is like, oh no, can't mess with people's money. And then earlier this year I started Eagle Entrepreneur. So the reason for that is because I have a medical license, and to keep it separate from also the ability to work out of state. So medical license, you're only bound to certain states. I was licensed in Ohio and North Carolina, and now I can work outside of state under the umbrella of Entrepreneur Mindset Coach. So it's essentially kind of all the same information. I don't use the clinical terminologies. There's no diagnosis or anything like that. It's just a way to help entrepreneurs work on whatever their specific goal is. It's like I want to get up there on stage and present, but they might be lodging in some kind of fear or something bullied them once upon a time that's still there. So help with that. And the instructor asked me to go over the different titles. So I will do that. There are therapists, coaches, executive coaches. Nowadays, you guys are probably hearing all of these different types of coaches. I had difficulties with that for a long time. That's what probably took me so long to get to where I am today, because it's not fair. I go to school all these years, had to take all these licensure tests, and here pops up a person. They're just a coach. You get paid more per hour than I do. Then you go to school and just maybe get a certificate online. If that, they call themselves a life coach. So I just kind of felt the pull. So it took me quite a few years to acknowledge and accept the term. But they're out there. They're all different kinds of coaches for whatever you need. Even parenting coaches, or our child coaches. I wouldn't just be a parent, but they're all out there. There's business coaches, business consultants, mentors. There's so many varieties. So really figure out before you go what you need. The way that I can tell, and this is something that your professor wanted me to share as well. When a person comes to me, I typically kind of review where their thoughts are, and asking, are your thoughts more focused on the past or in the future? And this is my personal way of kind of deciphering really quickly what we're going through and what we're dealing with. Because, and if somebody wants to answer this question, is it possible to be depressed about the year 2027? Can you be depressed about 2027 today? I got a couple, yeses, a couple, okay. I don't know if anyone wants to raise their 2027. Are you depressed about it?
I'm not personally,
No.
but it's very possible to be. Because, well, it also goes in with anxiety and depression, because anxiety can spiral into the future and you can have already created a future that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. So
And
that's,
you can be depressed about that.
so that's where I usually feel like anxiety is pulling the future to today, right? And depression tends to be pulling the past to today, because usually we're sad about things of the past because we can't go back and change them. Not possible. We wish we could, but it's not possible. So that's kind of how the differentiation of what is it that we're going through. But I do understand what you mean, because there is sometimes it's rare that I see it, but they can be so intertwined. I'm going to get a little bit more helpful information for you. Okay, this is I make worksheets and they're on Etsy. So this is one that when I do presentations, I like to help for clarity purposes, because our country has given us this different look on mental health and word of it. And so now we have this stigma. So I'll give you an example of physical health. We all have physical health, right? Nutrition, water, exercise, sleep. Right? We all have to do this, eat our vegetables, so on and so forth. And sleep 7-8 hours. When there is physical illness, we know that the person has to take medication, then we need surgery, need for isolation, depending on the severity of this illness or the condition may be contagious. Therefore, everyone has mental health, right? The health word after it. Physical health, mental health. We all have mental health. But, like I said, our culture is mixing up the two words of mental illness. Now that's different. Mental health, a quick kind of way to assess this is how the person is living, laughing, and love. So that'd be the relationships. Living, I used to be a health officer for Wood County and would get called to most like the hospital. There used to be, Harbor had a location, it's right next to the bowling alley, I can't think what it's called, fire, but it used to be there where we would come and assess and directly admit people into the psychiatric unit. That was the ability that I had when I was a health officer in Wood County. And sometimes the living conditions that would, this person just on the floor, it's unhealthy, unsanitary, they're not doing well, that's an indicator. Laughter, they're just flat affect, not engaging. Love, the relationships are being more distant on their own with people. Mental illness, so going in and seeing a provider of psychiatry or therapy, typically what we're looking for is the onset of when did this behavior start, the frequency, duration, what kind of impairment is it causing, if any at all, and the functioning, how they're functioning in their life, able to still work and things like that. Just like we have in physical health, there are similarities in mental health. When a person has a cough, go to the doctor, get assessed, they'll say, oh, diagnosis is cough. If you go to the doctor and you have a cough and maybe like headache, a cold, go to the doctor, third time, cough, headache, chills, fever, then they'll say you've got the flu, right? So similar how they go into symptoms, right? The symptoms, the more frequent, the amount of symptoms, it then changes the diagnosis. So similar in the mental illness, when someone has like a few symptoms of either anxiety or depression, that would be what we call an unspecified. Won't give the full diagnosis. It's what we call unspecified. Sometimes it's on hospital discharge paperwork because it's just a quick, short environment and get in, get out. It's not really long-term stays. And then we have the other category where there might be a few of the symptoms, kind of like a cold, right? And then before reaching the full diagnosis, like the flu, like I said over here, meaning that there are enough criteria met for a full diagnosis code of generalized anxiety or depression. Okay? Okay, so I'm gonna break it down a little bit to help you guys out. And I'm going to start explaining what some people refer to as EQ or IQ or emotional intelligence, and help you sort and differentiate, what's happening. We have thoughts, we have feelings, and we have emotions. They're different. And this is kind of like a little sheet to help separate, associate the differences. Thoughts, the way that you can tell real quickly is thoughts are always going to be multiple words explained, right? You're using multiple words. Feelings tend to be happy, sad, and single word. And they're temporary. Just like a flick, it's a temporary. I feel this, they're temporary. And then emotions are when a feeling, so for example, sadness over the course of like so many days, and these turns into an emotion of more like a depressive state, right? An emotion that affects the physical body as well. Okay. Incongruent self. So you're also made of 3 parts. You're made up of 3 parts, and they are body, mind, soul. 3 parts here. This is like an example of what I call incongruent self. We all kind of have these moments when I just want to keep watching Netflix right now. I'm so into this series, this episode. I gotta keep going, and we binge watch. But this other part, I've got homework. I gotta get this done. I've got laundry. It can create an internal conflict. Internal conflict is what I call this. So when they're not on the same page, they're out of alignment, and for business owners, it's good to be aware of this, because we become our own person that we're responsible for, and we're responsible for ourselves most of the time, because there's no boss above us to tell us what to do, when to do, like regular employment agencies and places. So it's very important to find ways to get the 3 on board. Me personally, I do a lot of operant conditioning. Do you know what that is? No. So some of you, I'm sure you guys all have to take the psychology class and learn about Skinner, and you learn about operant conditioning, where the tests where you tested the little bell with the dog and created saliva. Noise. So I'll listen to certain songs, certain sound frequencies to create, like if I'm going to go run, certain sound frequencies. I'm going to sit and write, certain sound frequencies, so that to get using my body to get my mind, this is what we're doing right now. Okay, so it's really helpful when we keep this alignment of mind, soul, mind, and body in alignment. And I wish I could go into more detail for you here. And the reason that I kind of put it in this order is because there are things in which like I did the operant conditioning, our mind can be telling the body what you're going to do right now, especially in a run. It's like a lot of mind over matter. Maybe you've heard that phrase before, right? So that's why that one's there. And then soul, if the definition of faith is the believing of things that we have not seen. So, and for those of you who believe in higher power, any certain religion as well, can kind of help direct and guide you that we're on this, making the good choices and safe choices. Okay? Typically, I also get into explaining the difference of when to put your thoughts over your feelings. If we have time, I will explain that as well. Okay, mental assets. Growth mindset. Who's heard of this? Growth mindset. Definition, growth mindset. Remember? Or is it just in all of the syllabuses and all of the... It's in everywhere.
It's the understanding and willingness to learn something new and to keep expanding your knowledge.
I like the word willingness. Fixed mindset. So if you have a growth mindset, there has to be an opposite. Have you heard this term? Fixed mindset?
Like stuck in your ways, not really looking for new methods or anything like that, just trying to do it all the time.
Yeah, routine based. Yeah. Benefits mindset. This one tends to go after growth mindset. So because I'm really engaged and doing well, an extension of myself to help others. And then this is a newer one. There's a bunch of other ones too, by the way, mindsets. I like this one. This one is called intentional growth mindset. So to elaborate on the willingness, this one would be kind of like, I know Warren Buffett and some of the other people, they will intentionally read so many books per week. It's amazing. So intentionally making yourself grow, not just when you have time, but you're making time for that. 5 a.m. Anyone ever read or heard of the 5 a.m. Club book? 5 a.m. Club, great book. It's cool the way that they separate and divide 1 hour into 3 segments. Productive day. It's a really productive day. But it's being intentional and really helping yourself out. I want to also highlight, so fixed mindset, for some people who are growth, can't understand fixed, and fixed mindset people, they're like, growth mindset, that's just not for them. They tend to have little clashes. And so, and then I also see like couples, sometimes I have seen couples who are both entrepreneurs. There's a whole lot of growth mindset in there. And it's like, well, who's going to follow, who's going to lead? So there's not necessarily wrong, answer. The other thing is, it also, from history, it depends on when and where you were at in regards to history or the timeline in America, because we're not in the informational age, but there was an industrial age. So that time period was helpful for America because even though they were fixed mindset, being appreciative of that, factory work, that the people who go to into factories and can be there, God bless them. I can do like the same thing day after day, but that everyone has their own, parts and pieces for all of us to fit on this quilt together. We all help each other. Risk assessment. Is risk failure?
is risk failure. Should it be failure?
I would say no, it's not failure. Just because, I mean, if you never took the risk, then you'd never have a chance at success either, so it's pretty neutral.
Great answer. Yeah, so we can have risk, no risk, some risk, for risk, I call it a risk meter. Myself, I kind of tend to lean more towards the safety side. I'm not really over here so much, so I probably in this, that's what probably added this last one. What will I get out of this? What will I get out of this? Kind of thinking of
almost in the future now. The other thing with risk in regards to mental, let's say health, because again, just side note, the DSM is an American-based book, it's a diagnosing book. So for other countries and other places, it doesn't always apply, diagnosing. And even in using diagnosing, I try to kind of look more at the symptoms as well. And bipolar, one of the symptoms, and we see this, kind of, I'm sure you guys have seen celebrities even, they're a little bit more risk takers. And I've heard even, not seen the actual research on it, but even Abraham Lincoln, they say he had mental illness of bipolar. So it can have like benefits to it as well, right? Think of the risk that he took in helping country. Okay, review. So now your worksheet, you can pull that out. How can I look at failure differently?
So looking at failure differently, I guess I would say balance as well. Still really life is about like balance and reflection. Also, I gave this option to submit as on your sheet as well.
And really it's about how we look at the situation. Like I said, if we have enough time, I'll explain a little bit more of the thoughts and feelings and emotions. Because this is what sends the signal down to the body of what feeling we're going to have, depending on the thoughts. Okay? Entrepreneurs known to have high levels of stress. Why? Why? Just kind of like
Because everything comes back to them. Like, they can kind of control everything in a sense that's around them. And I don't know, as somebody that works below somebody, it's really nice to know that I'm not the end all catch all. So I don't have to deal with that stress.
responsible for the finances, the marketing, responsible for.
I just think there's a lot of risk involved with a lot of like straining work. Maybe there's entrepreneurs like in a lot of debt, and like failure can lead to like really bad consequences for them, and just like the amount of work, like along with like the risk with debt and money.
So would you, for your risk meter, where would you be at? Are you more of a safety like me, or where is your risk meter?
Probably more of a safety.
So I also kind of feel like entrepreneurs, like the type of people who be entrepreneurs, are the type of people who tend to have more stress, just because my mind I feel like stress and anxiety is kind of like the reason that a lot of people want to make a change, or be like how you start a business or something like that. If you're happy where you're at, you're stress-free, you're not going to want to take that leap.
That's a beautiful answer too, yeah. There are some articles about that as well, yeah. Some young people who are born in stressful households are more likely to have higher resilience to get those businesses going because their why is strong too. And did you have, someone else have a question or answer? No. This is this one. one, for example, and I like your answers. It's because, and maybe you've seen the TikTok, I was trying to find this video, but I was like, I don't think it's gonna work in here either. There's a girl, she'll go like this with her arm, banker's hours, work hours, you've seen it. Teacher hours, and then she goes all the way around, 24 hours, 24 hours, in regards to entrepreneurs, because we're always with ourselves, right? Our business right here. Non-stop. Okay, does time equal money? You've probably heard this phrase before, time is money. That statement. Your thoughts about this statement? Time is money. Usually people say it like, time is money.
Yeah, I think time is definitely money, because like, for example, I was under over construction, I work for a company called CCC, do a lot of like bottom insulation, and in a lot of those jobs, they wind up paying us like 200, 300, 400 million on top of our contract just to shorten it by 6 weeks or whatever, because the amount of vehicles that they do churn out that amount of time is going to supersede that number, so I think each day counts for them.
And so then we have, that's a great example of, I'm not sure which class you guys might learn this in, but the different types of income. So that sounds like earned income. You have earned, passive, and like portfolio income. So there's different ways. So that, yeah, and in that situation, yeah, time, money in that scenario. But another thing too I wanted to add here is that in regards to, sometimes we'll hear all of these life quotes when we're growing up, and it's not until we're around 18 to 24 we start to question that. And this one, when I was getting certified in the trauma of money, they gave us this perspective of time, the equal with the line. It's not equal to money. They're not comparables, because money is called currency. It comes, you can get more. Time, is it possible to get more time? No. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. And I think for entrepreneurs, knowing what your goal is, for some people it's a certain amount of money or achievement. Other times it's time. Mine is more time, so I get to have, I block my schedule off and work only 3 days, because I know like I can't get time back, so I like to use the time for other things that only money can do so much. The other thing with time and money is, the big reason why I'm here today is helping you just learn to separate, for those of you who do an entrepreneur, like some kind of business full-time, or when you get older as a side endeavor, being cautious of your self-esteem getting intertwined with business net profit, because that can be detrimental to identity and self. Okay? Try to keep those two like separate. This is me. Have your own mission, vision, morals, values. Know all those things about yourself. And this is the company's mission, vision, purpose statement, so on and so forth. And keep those two separate and knowing where the boundaries are within that. Okay, condition of intellectual property, as I just shared, being mindful of protecting this would fall into the protection category. Self-esteem, profit, separate. A few minutes left. I'll just go over this one real quickly. PT has a D. This is another one, like I mentioned, in levels, but this one actually has names. So, like I gave you earlier, colds, cough, colds, flu levels. PTSD, it's not possible for, let's say there's an event that occurs today, natural disaster or something, the next day to have PTSD. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be a diagnosis. And some want to use that phrase, and we understand what they're trying to say, but because of time has not happened, duration of time, it's not going to create that diagnosis. So for example, the first, if an incident occurred we would call it an adjustment disorder. Okay, I'm adjusting to a house fire or something, a natural disaster that occurred. After so many weeks, 3 months, it turns into an acute stress disorder. Again, meeting more symptoms before, 6 months, and so forth. Now, we're meeting the criteria, and it's still interrupting our life before PTSD diagnosis occurs. Does that make sense? Just like the cough, the cold, the flu, it's also like levels of symptoms as well as duration, how long out. This one, post-traumatic stress disorder, something I heard once. Someone is an athlete talk about post-traumatic sports disorder. So for some people who intertwine, again, like I said, be mindful of your self-esteem and the business, getting them interlocked, being careful of making sure they're separate. Disney, I think they use the phrase of we're on stage, and you've heard of that, you go down there. Or Kobe, he used to use that mamba. So recognizing these certain characters or ways of looking at yourself, of separating your identity to keep yourself safe from the job, position, title, specialty area that you're in, so they don't get intertwined. And when, say for example, like actors and actresses or anyone in that field, celebrities, once they stop, they tend to have it take it a little more personal, right? It affects them more, but keeping it separate can be helpful. Signs of stress. Hair loss, irritability, lack of sleep, anxiety, weight problems, concentrating, blood pressure, chest pain, sore eyes. This happened to me, like sore eyes, muscle, headaches. There's physical signs that's alerting us I'm stressed. Physically, our body is speaking to us, and it's just a matter of listening, paying attention. Oh, another way that stress is created is, well, the main definition of how I've been taught is via expectations. So expectations that either the entrepreneur places upon themselves or another individual places upon the person. And that's usually generally where stress comes from. Stress is like secondary to an expectation being created. Does that make sense? So whenever you're sensing stress, take a moment, pause. Where did this expectation come from? Is it something I made? Because then if it's something we made, you can make adjustments and accommodate it and change it. Or is this an expectation that an employer, parent, teacher, someone else created over me? Okay? Which there's probably some wiggle room as well for compromise, but yeah, know the root. Like I said, I like to go to the root. It's an expectation is what it is. Reducing stress. When we're talking, now this is more physical related. Avoid carbs. Carbs, coffee, concentrated substances, white flour, sugar, drugs, alcohol, because it'll send the body up, then it down, and it just makes it more irritated and affected. But increase omega-3, exercise because the cortisol and the dopamine that get released can be beneficial when you're stressed. Laughter, positive music, listening to that can help change the mood as well. And consistency. Being consistent will help reduce the stress overall by drinking water, conscious breathing, and eating healthy. Trust. Another way to reduce stress is to identify what works for you or who you can trust in, what you can trust in. And this helps reduce stress. Who do I trust? So in regards to entrepreneurship,
who do I trust? Sometimes we, like, sorry, I don't know your name, but we're given an example earlier about coming from a stressful environment and wanting to change, right? We tend to isolate, for the most part, entrepreneurs, and do it our way. Perfectionism kicks in, or we don't listen to anyone else. That can not be healthy because it can be limiting to only ourselves and our abilities when we do need people. So this is something, oftentimes I'll translate. So for example, with Christian counseling, the DSM is the Bible, what the Bible says about these symptoms and what they used to call it, because the DSM didn't always exist. And then I'll take the DSM and business terminologies and figure out, okay, what are the roots? This is the biggest one that I've found thus far, is trust. So if you don't remember anything else, remember, like, trust is going to be a key factor. The other thing I noticed is that also, you know how, like, in your personal relationships, they say, oh, the building blocks, the foundation of the relationship. Two big ones, respect and trust. If we don't have those two blocks on the bottom, the other blocks, love, honesty, so on and so forth, they're just going to fall. Those are key blocks. So trust, who do I trust? Why do I trust them? What do I trust about them or company? When to trust. Okay. Okay, your worksheet. If you want to pull that back out, we have a question, self-reflection question. Who do I trust? Okay, so hopefully the questions were insightful for you to give you insight. And then this is a quote that I had in my office wall. Do I have someone who wants to read it at all before you guys go away?
Man, because he sacrifices his health in order to make money, then he sacrifices money to recuperate his health, and then he is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. The result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he is never going to die, and then dies having never really lived.
This is a quote about the Dalai Lama and his interest in what's the most fascinating thing about humanity is what we're doing with our time and how we're utilizing it. Here, when we get here, we're still thinking there, so when are we in the present? So for me, this challenges you to live in the present. Do you have questions? Anybody have questions? Yeah. I have some business cards, but if you have questions, is there anything else?